So we have a special guest today.
Yes,
We've got Matt Best, Logan Stark, and Clint Trial. How are you, buddy?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's good to see all of you guys. Always love coming back here. You guys are awesome friends of mine. And I'm glad
Clint,
to be on
I
the
have
show.
to say you won the accolade of best actor in the Memorial Day video, just with those steely eyes. It's so manly that it just commanded presence in that video. So thank you for making a cameo.
Oh, geez.
It's really nice to be sitting next to a Marine in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you tell
a little bit better?
Did you tell Clint about your Semper Fidelis commercial series that you want to make?
Clint and I have been having a lot of chats lately. A lot of potentially really big things in the future, but we haven't gotten into the recap on the Semper Fidelis series quite yet.
Well,
Slow.
like the lovely Alaskan commentary when there's no devices or technology that you can use, and you refer to really bad Marine Corps jokes for hours upon hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, days upon days worth of bad Marine Corps jokes. I think they're kind of
we were
never
just
ending.
making fun of Marines pretty much, Clint. So essentially it'd be like, someone's got to suck that dick for Chesty. And
Give him one for
Corps was like, what?
Yeah. Nobody has to do that, bro.
No.
Like nobody. Somebody does Semper Fidelis. And it's like,
yeah, we're definitely a filthy bunch.
Yeah, those willing to do what most are unwilling to do are the people that are going to change the planet, okay?
That's right.
And so, somebody's got to stick their dick in that colostomy bag. You know what I'm saying? Semper Fidelis.
Semper Fidelis.
I'm pretty sure when we were at the Memorial Day shoot, my dad was there. My dad looked at me and said, I wished you were more like Clint's son. You joined the army like a bitch. And then he walked away from me and said, that one's for Chesty. So I get it. You guys are cool.
Yeah, your dad just started calling me son last week.
he did. What was that?
Hey, son.
What was that?
I don't know.
He was
Wishful
like, son.
thinking.
I was like, what the fuck?
That's wishful thinking right there.
Maybe.
He just said, fuck it. At 70 plus years old. What is he, 78?
Yeah.
So he's 78 years old. He's like, I'm just going to take the son that I wanted this entire
He literally,
time.
Logan was there and he was just like, hey, son, out of nowhere. And we were like, that's a little weird. But
I think he might have forgot his name. And so he's just filling it. He's just filling it with son.
Solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, your dad is one cool cat, Matt. I'll tell you what, man. I found myself in all the conversations that I've had with him, I found him to be much, much cooler than you. But,
I have some more years, hopefully, to live if I keep living. So maybe I can level up to him.
Totally kidding.
All good.
I do have a story that I want you to tell, Clint, before we get into the other things that we want to talk about. But Clint went to jump school before he was in the military in a foreign country.
Yes, this is so good.
You gotta pull the mic in close, buddy. You gotta tell that story because it's fucking epic, man.
Which part of it?
Yeah. How did you find yourself going to a jump school in a foreign country? You gotta tell the backstory to that because I was sitting there blown away and enamored by this story when you were telling me at the ranch. That was over a year ago. You got to tell everybody that story.
I think enough time has kind of gone by. It's been decades now, so it doesn't really matter anymore. So, but for a long time, I was kind of worried about this story. It turns out there was absolutely nothing to worry about. But once upon a time, the whole way that I got there was my old man. My old man was a Marine in Nam. And, he spent a couple tours over there, did some pretty intense fighting. He's with 2-7. Anyways, I think after Nam ended, there's a period of time in America where and we'll probably jump into this a little later.
Just please roll with it.
Yeah. Nam vets versus our generation of vets. I think there's a lot of commonalities, and perhaps now even much more so. But getting back on track, I think what kind of led me there was my old man just wasn't quite finished yet. Back then it was a totally different world. I mean, as you guys all know, but he used to travel quite a bit after Nam. And he traveled back and forth quite a bit to Central America in places that, most people back then would not have, that'd be like going to Afghanistan today, because you had civil wars going on there and people were like, yeah, let's, stay away from that place. But there my old man was like, I don't say every couple of months, but a little more, less often than that. But, making long trips, coming back. And, I remember him coming home and I'd be like, Dad, finally, it's been months. So, as I kind of grew up, it became inevitable to him that college life was probably not going to be in my immediate future. So, he kind of gave in and said, all right, well, he's going to join the military. And I'm not going to be able to stop him. Maybe I can give him a little head start on things, So he started dragging me down to Central America as a teenager, and, been to El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, all over Central America, which, looking back on it now, I count those blessings, and that's exactly what they were. They were blessings, because it allowed me to open up my aperture and start seeing the world as for what it really is, not for what it is here in our little American bubble of goodness, right? Which I'll probably at some point mention that again in some of our conversations. But yeah, I think it started to make me grow up in a lot of ways, seeing how other countries in the world treated their own people, how the people treated each other there, and just the overall. They do not put a value on life like Americans do, and it shows, in most of their day-to-day lives, and especially how their governments are organized and how those governments treat their people. I know I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but that's kind of what got me going down to Central America. My father, he's a single parent, so he did the best he could, and I think looking back now, the lessons he was trying to give me were exactly what I wish I could give my children. But so fast forward, I'm about 16 years old, and so he takes me down to Guatemala, and I went through their jump school. He put me through their jump school. And, so I had to learn all the, jump commands in Spanish. I mean, I still know some of them. Like,
so good.
Pies y rodillas juntos. It's like, I still, it's because it's ingrained in my memory. It's no different than, feet and knees together. I mean, you learned it when you went to jump school. Nobody's ever going to forget that. It's like, it's burned in there. Well, before I learned it in English, I learned it in Spanish, and it definitely helped, as I found out later on when I went to like the real jump school here in America. I want to say real, like our jump school, like it was an absolute breeze. I mean, not that airborne school is difficult by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, most of us look at it like it was a welcomed vacation, you know. Like,
at least in our era, I feel like back in the day, jump school was like a very accredited school and challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. completely agree, Matt. I mean, that's one of those schools I think that over the years has become absolutely victimed and diluted and watered down. And it's unfortunate, but yeah.
What was your mindset as a 16-year-old going through that? Were you just like, whoa, let's go? Or were you a little nervous walking into that?
No. It was the absolute time of my life. I mean, because I think a lot of us, and when I say us, I mean I'm talking about our community of the kind of people, right, that we are.
Yeah.
Would all pretty much agree that, like, yeah, man, if I could go back at 16 years old and go through something like that, every one of us would have been like, where do I sign? How do I get there? Send me. I would absolutely love to do that. I mean, that kind of began my life of high adventure, man. Like,
what was like the reception of the local guys seeing a 16-year-old Wedo going through jump school? Were they like receptive and like, oh, come on, crazy kid, let's do it? Or were they kind of like, what the heck is going on?
No. I was an absolute, anomaly. I was a spectacle for all of them. But, back then, at 16, 17 years old, man, I could freaking run circles around most people. So, I mean, I was way too much motivation, not enough thought kind of thing, just full of piss and vinegar and, a regular American red-blooded teenage boy, man. I absolutely craved it and thirsted for it. And it certainly scratched the itch. But there were some extremely funny moments that I can recollect from jump school. And one of them that sticks out, I think, more than anything was there was a colonel's son. And, I thought I had it bad. Not bad, but like I thought I was young and because I was 16 years old. And, this colonel's son was 13. I think he had just turned 13. So, maybe a day or two after 12 years old. And, on the first jump that we actually made, I found this kid standing right in front of me, getting JPI'd with these eyeballs, like, the fear of God in this poor kid. And he has no idea what's going on. And God. I never saw him during any of the training we had been doing. So it wasn't like his dad sent him to the course and like he learned how to do anything. He just kind of showed up on the first jump, and there I am, man. I got a pretty funny picture of him. But there I am getting ready, stand at the quarter, and I'm looking beside me, and this poor kid is shaking in his boots. Anyways, we get on the aircraft. It was an Arava Israeli-made aircraft, which I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but it's the kind that it's got a little ass end that pivots on a hinge, and it'll open up. Anyways, it's a good aircraft, but we got on that thing. It came time to jump, and this kid was sitting. He was not first out, but he was ahead of me, right? So as we shuffled into the door. He gets to the door, right, and he just, I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen somebody freeze in the door. This was worse than that. Yeah.
Quick pause here. That's how Matt and I actually met. He was a jump refusal in front of me. Sorry.
No, so yeah, this was worse than that. I mean, but it was my first experience ever seeing, somebody freeze in the door. So I didn't know any better. But that kid pretty much said, "No, I will not, and I will throw a 2-year-old hissy fit right here, right now. You cannot get me out." And so the Guatemalan jump master just, he kind of gives him one more opportunity. And by this time, he like sitting down, He just straight up flat sat down, put his hands next to the doors like, you can't make me. And, I'm sitting there like, well, yeah, this is not what we planned. But so the jump master, he just, after the second chance, he was like, okay. He grabbed him by the back of his chute and lifted this poor kid up and out the door he went. Out the door he went. And then the jump master, like, straight up just like, and I'm like, no problem, man. I'm out. I'm out. But yeah, it was a very, very interesting experience for me. Not the only experience I had down there as far as doing other things and other types of training. But,
I'm sure that gave you a little bit of what we like to call the vampire effect, where you see someone else younger struggling to do that, and you're like, man, this is awesome. Like, it just makes you want to do it a little bit more, and like his weakness gives you power.
Yeah, that's kind of that mentality that's like no different, and we probably all have it. Like, how many times have you ever been on a hump or a freaking rock run or doing a simple PFT, and you either pass somebody, it's like that little feeling, right? Or somebody drops out. Somebody drops out, right? Somebody drops out. You're like, yeah, man. Yeah. Like that to me has always given me like a boost in motivation. Like, yep, you're gone, but I'm still here and I'm still kicking. I probably shouldn't be, but I am still here. And it always served to give me more motivation, albeit at the expense of others. But
I call it the Highlander syndrome. Essentially, you absorb their powers even because they quit, and you're like, and you just absorb it and it makes you stronger,
Hell yeah. Yeah.
That works too. There can be only one.
There can be only one. Yeah, we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, you see, I like it, or I used to. Obviously I don't do anything peer driven like that anymore, but God, when you see somebody quitting, like in SFAS or one of these other courses, it was like the best fuel you could ever get. It was better than having an extra packet of peanut butter or a hot cup of coffee. It was like, just give me one of these guys to quit. That's all I want. Just to know that I'm a little bit stronger. And then everything felt pretty good. It gave you kind of like a warm fire on a really cold, chilly night. It's like, oh, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be really warm. And I don't know what that is. It'd be interesting to talk to a psychologist there's a spider coming right down here. It'd be interesting to call a psychologist to figure out what that actually is. Because there is something, and I think with type A's, when you see things like that, and what it is, there's got to be like a competition type piece of you that really, really enjoys seeing people lose when you like to win. I don't know what it is. I know.
Well,
to your point,
like, I'm not a psychologist, but
you're not.
Nope. Surprise, surprise. No. You got the fight or flight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you make the decision to fight, one of the next steps after that is to, if you do succeed after choosing to fight, you're like, oh, I'm being successful. So it probably, dumps some serotonin into your brain or some chemical release to where after you start, you're rewarded for the decisions that you make. So it empowers you to move forward.
I think portions of it too are when you're going through a selection process and there's a lot of unknowns about it, you don't necessarily know how hard it's going to get, right? Especially like, I'm sure every exercise you do, like when you went through Rip or RAS, you go to Cole Range and it's just very like intense situation. You don't know what you're going to get. So when people start quitting, I was like, oh, so this is like part of the tough part, because I just had 3 dudes quit. And I'm like, I'm still running on a pretty full gas tank right now. I'm not even pretty low. And for me, it was always like, okay, so people are quitting at this level. That means I'm better than most, right? And so it kind of gave me motivation that like whatever would be thrown at me would be absolutely like manageable. Because if people are quitting at that level, then cool, we're getting those numbers down to where they need to attrit enough people for us to actually be selected.
Right.
And it's competitive for sure. It's not fun to watch other people fail, but in that context and that environment, it's massively competitive because you are fighting against other peers, because let's just say you have 100 people, they're only going to select, let's say 40 or less. And if 4 people quit, well, that's numerically closer to where you need to get to be a closer person to be potentially selected.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think completely valid. I like what you said earlier, Evan, about it's a competition. At the end of the day, I think driven men and women that have the competition bone in them tend to kind of rise up to the upper echelons, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But I think through the course of my life, and certainly during my career in the Marines, I came to learn that the competition, ended up not being so much about me against other peers, other mates, other people that were going through the same thing I was. Rather, the competition is something that I came to learn is against my own self, my own thoughts, my own determination, my own limits to where is the end of my willpower? How will I ever find it? Will I ever find the absolute extent of where I can take no more? And to me, I think that was always a very curious thing that I had about myself. Was how far can I be pushed? How much can I take? How much can I endure before you break? And
that makes sense because you didn't have any peers when you were 16 years old and jumping out of a plane.
I couldn't help but think about this. Like, other 16-year-old kids in America were going to camp. Like, you had people, and I'm just throwing this out in a comparison. If you think about like really rich kids from Manhattan or something like that, and they're going off to camp in upstate New York, and they're learning how to, tie a square knot and shoot a bow. And then Clint's in Guatemala going to jump school.
I think that's even in the times. Like look at it
nuts.
now. Most 16-year-olds now are doing TikTok dances, and the thought of going to South America or said state or country and jumping out of a plane, that is incomprehensible to what they're going through in life. And I think it's just kind of a different breed,
I think we need to start our own school like Tim Kennedy, and Clint can be the principal, and we just teach them like a bunch of mill shit where it's just like, this week we're gonna put you through jump school, because you can get certified free fall at 16 years old.
Yeah.
So Clint could be the principal.
Yeah, and I think that's why I said earlier, my old man gave me some experiences that I wish I wish I could do similar things for my kids, but maybe it's my risk tolerance or my threshold for putting my children in danger like that is probably the number one reason why I wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah.
But again, different times. We grew up in totally different times when it was not uncommon to see a fire team of 5 and 6 year olds riding in the back of a pickup truck.
Right.
I mean, I saw that all the time living down here. But it's totally different world. But yeah, so finding myself in Guatemalan jump school with the paracaidistas, it was certainly a surreal experience for me while going through it. The actual graduation ceremony was fairly unique as well. They took me over to where the O Club is, this big grass hut, and all the officers and like one or two of the enlisted, because I mean, who are enlisted guys anyway? Why would they go to such an event? They're the lowly enlisted guys, That's kind of how they were down there. But they put a chair up, center stage for me, and I had about 40 or 50 Guats, sitting in the audience, just a bunch of chairs. And they gave me this big mug, right? It's this massive like trophy mug with handles on the both sides. And they had a little table next to the chair that I was supposed to stand up on and, give a speech or whatever. And I see them bring this mug over and put it on the table. And I then watched them fill it, a third whiskey, a third beer, and a third of God knows what else. Maybe some kind of, wild Central American freaking jaguar or something's blood. I don't know. But like it was
jaguar's blood.
I'm like looking at it. I'm like, they don't mean for me to drink that. So, thinking that that's probably some ceremonial type thing or whatever. So I get up on the chair and they bring that thing right over to me. And, the translator, the Terp, just kind of like, hey man, there's some inscriptions on the side of this. And all you have to do is stand there on that chair, stand up, hold your mug out and read off the inscription or the engraving. And so I was like, okay, that's easy enough, but you don't mean for me to drink this. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, senor. Si, senor. Please drink all very fast. I'm like, what? So, I read it off. But just prior to me reading it, the main black hat, he came over and he took the gold wings and he dropped them into the mug. And, that's when I kind of realized. And, then the Terp came over and he's like, when you finish, just grab wings with teeth. I'm like, all right, I see. So I see how this is going. And I got to the very end of it. I chugged it all down and I kept it all down for about 15 seconds. And I had him in my teeth and I'm like, yes. And, beat my chest, American style, just making a spectacle for them to witness, like, this Americans, right? And then it just, all of it came up straight up Linda Blair, Exorcist style, like, and all over the front row, man. Like, I'm not saying it landed on them, but certainly the projectile at that velocity hitting the deck was enough to create a lot of splatter that, so they got doused with some of my puke. But, it's a different time, a different world back then. I would imagine it is changed there just like it has here, but probably not nearly as much.
Right.
That is the rite of passage at that age. I love that.
Yeah.
I like what you said earlier too about being competitive against your kind of selection things. Because I think for a lot of kids, and maybe you can speak to this that maybe listen to the show, they're always curious about selection courses and training in the military. And I've tried to like articulate it, but I don't necessarily know how. But there's a difference between schools that are there to teach you and schools that are there to make you quit. And there's a huge difference in that. And I use the analogy with like Ranger School versus like going to Ranger Battalion. It's a selection course trying to get you to quit, whereas Ranger School is like a combat leadership course where they don't want you to quit. They want you to pass, to spread that knowledge to your unit or whatever. Like, do you think kind of having that experience at 16 like molded you into this mindset of wanting to join the actual American military and then pursuing harder pipelines than the average person?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. No question about it. I mean, I grew up as a little kid, like always kind of knowing. I tried to think about this one time and try to remember back when I first knew I wanted to go do Marine shit, right? And I can't. I feel like it's always been there. And I don't particularly agree with oh, he was born to do that, or like that's what he was born to do. I think there's I think that's too simple, right? I think you become a product of your immediate environment. And my immediate environment was my old man, somebody that had a vast experience in war and combat. And so it's hard for me to remember a time when I did not want to be like him.
Yeah.
Right. But as far as that helping spur or catapult me into what my inevitability was a career, a lifelong career in the military. It absolutely did. I mean, and it kind of emboldened and the intensity and the ferocity by which I pursued it, because I realized while I was down there that like I truly love doing this shit. Like I do. It's something that I've always enjoyed. I've always looked at it as a challenge, and I think I've always been kind of driven by challenges. I think challenges are something that like ooh yeah, that's I want to get my hands on that.
Right.
But going back to like being motivated by others when they quit. I will say this: I don't. It's not as if I ever would look at somebody that just quit and just be like in total disgust. Because I never quite felt that way. I always just kind of felt like, okay, well, that person is learning what is not for him. He's learning what not to do. He's learning that, hey man, I may have thought that this was my path in life, but I just found out, and oftentimes in a somewhat humiliating way, because your peers are going to see it, that you found out in that way that like, hey, this life isn't for me. And I give no man any. I don't look down on those that happens to, but then they go and pursue something else. Okay, because they're realizing that that's not what they're about, and for them to hang around and keep going down that route, they've already learned from themselves, like, hey, like this isn't for me, and they felt strongly enough about it to quit.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
If you feel strongly enough to quit something, then you should have a hard
Sure.
talk with yourself about continuing to pursue that kind of endeavor, that kind of line of work, or but yeah, the thing I think you mentioned, Matt, and you asked selections. There's certainly the kind of selections that are kind of designed. I don't know if I would say designed to make you quit. Rather, they are there and designed to find out if you will quit. And I know that that's probably splicing words a little bit, but for example, one of the selections that I went through, and many of us have gone through, there is no emotion from your cadre.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're there is no like, hey man, way to go, or hey man, keep going, or hey man, like there's no feedback whatsoever.
Right.
And you find out real quick that the competition is it's all up here. Everything is about up there. And I kind of had to put myself into that mindset where I did not want paying attention to my peers and whether or not they quit before I did to be my main driving factor. The thing that drives me. Like, I can't wait till somebody else quits. Like for me, I think I had gotten to that point where I realized, like, yeah, that can be beneficial. seeing that can be a boost of motivation. But ultimately, what's going to keep one foot going in front of the other is something much more important than that. And that's digging down deep and keep going. And that's all up here, So the battle becomes a battle within yourself, I think.
Super serious question for you, Clint. Yeah. Was it the Marine Corps guy slaying the little dragon in the sky, and you're like, all right, I'm a Marine, I'm joining the Marine Corps? Was it always the Marine Corps? Obviously coming from your heritage with your father being a Marine.
No, believe it or not, there was a time where all I wanted to be in this world was a Ranger.
And then you went severely
did you
wrong.
Have to say that?
Yes, I did. I don't want to say all I wanted to be, right? I just looked at it as like, okay, I could start there. And then maybe after I'm finished with being a Ranger, maybe then the Marines will take me. But,
it's like dirty army guy.
Yeah, it's like JRTC. You can treat it like that, right?
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
I wanted to ask you another thing, because you told me this other story about how you had navigated your way through Central America with like a atlas or some crazy ass
I'm sorry.
map sheet.
Say that again, Evan. You broke up on a little bit of it.
You have a story about how your dad just gave you a kind of a random grid, and you had to drive your way through like Guatemala, or I think it might have been all of Central America. I can't remember the exact story.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You got to tell that story too.
Well, yeah. So without going into way too much detail about it, I was going to be taking a couple of other folks down there, and so it's the way in which we got to Central America that was extremely interesting. But a number of other people, meaning about 20 or so other grown ass men that easily had 15, 20 years on me, and all of them had already had either retired from the military, were former paratroopers, former Rangers, former SF guys, and my old man was like, "You're old enough now, son. I want you to lead this, and you're going to take and get everybody down to where they need to go." And, obviously it was like, hell yeah, easy day. I've got that. No problem. I mean, what full of piss and vinegar teenager wouldn't I didn't want to show my old man that I was afraid to do that. So I said absolutely, and I jumped on the task. And but there's those surreal moments that kind of come to you, little epiphanies out of nowhere, and you just kind of ask yourself, "What the fuck am I doing here? How did I get here?" Right. So a lot of that happened to me on that trip. But we basically flew into Belize and then took the road from Belize City down through Belmopan, and then crossed the border into Guatemala on this rickety old shanty thing like bus. And so, there was GPS technology back then, but none of us had any of that shit. It's just wasn't prevalent yet. So, I navigated us from Belize City all the way into some of the different regions of the northern province of Guatemala and through the jungles. And, that was an experience unlike any other. And at every turn of the way, the 50 questions that were being screamed out and spat out at me from the back of the bus, like, where the fuck are we? There was a bit of pressure, and I think it was in those moments that my bullshit, my ability to bullshit, started kicking into high gear, because I really, really was very, very unsure about where we were. But my dad had taught me how to read a map, and so by the grace of God, we arrived where we were supposed to. But, not without having gone over like some torrential terrain. In the bridges down there, are like seriously nothing but like trees and then gravel and rock put over them. So, you have no idea. And, these are not like, all right, if the bridge breaks, no big deal. Somebody will come and, help us out or whatever. It's like, no, man, there is nobody out here. and the drop, it would instantaneously, kill us all. So, decision points, I call them, for a young man to have to go through. Should we cross or should we not, And I think I was very, very lucky in a lot of those moments back then,
I think you've had a significantly different childhood than most people.
This is great. That's a fair statement.
Yeah. So you joined the Marine Corps. How old were you when you joined?
Well, I was actually much older than the average. Is around 25, 26. Is somewhere in there is when I joined the delayed entry program, whatever. So I didn't go straight into the Corps like I had wanted to. I mentioned earlier my dad was a Marine in Nam, and absolutely loved the Marine Corps. Loved to hate the Marine Corps, and hated that he loved the Marine Corps. Just like I always say, Marines, we have a love-hate relationship with the Marine Corps. It's ours to love, and it's ours to hate. And so help me God, anybody else that's not a Marine talks shit about. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it absolutely is. It's a two-way street. You hate to love it, and you love to hate it. But I would never trade 1 second of my time as a Marine. And but I started out because my old man was a Marine, and he looked at it like, not for my son. My son is not going to go through that shit.
Wow.
And his argument was like, look, you need to join the Army, okay? You join the Army, you'll get paid on time. You'll actually get a paycheck, right? You'll actually gain rank, when it's due, right? Your gear won't be from World War II, which, come to find out, when I first joined up, I was getting gear from Vietnam. So it hasn't changed, we still get shit into the stick in a lot of ways on gear, although I think that's been changing in a lot of better ways. A little bit, right? But so he convinced me that the right path would be to join the National Guard. And I have absolutely nothing bad to say about the National Guard, man. I absolutely don't. But that was not in my cards. Like and I didn't really realize it until I spent a little bit of time there. And I did not get out of the National Guard in a very good way. Like, it was not good.
So you actually did join the National Guard?
I did. This was right around Desert Storm. And my thought was, nice. Okay, hey, man, like, it's my turn. There's a war going on. I need to go.
Yeah.
I have to go. And, anybody that knew me back then, friends I was with, I mean, they all knew it. But like, anybody asked about me, like, that dude's, there's only one future for him, and it's going to be either a soldier or a Marine, That's just kind of how gung-ho I was about all of it. But yeah, so he convinced me that would be the better route. And that's when he came out with like, look, check it out, son. The Army has these things called Rangers, and they've been around forever. In fact, they were the first ones. And, and so he painted up this beautiful picture about Army Rangers. And man, I remember thinking, wow, that's cool. I mean, I had Rangers, posters up on my wall as a kid, and I totally drank the Kool-Aid, and it's a good Kool-Aid to drink because Rangers have a fucking totally badass history, and if you were to ask me, they are my absolute favorite counterpart to work with. I think
they slipped him $20 to say all this about Rangers, guys, by the way.
I think we were literally talking about this the other day. I agree with you. And I think I was telling you, Evan, I was like, I need to hire more Rangers.
Yeah.
Like, we've got a few on the team, and like their work ethic is.
Yeah, the work ethic is absolutely phenomenal. I think if you just take what we just now said, the work ethic, and then you apply it to the consequences of any organization, like you'll see that those organizations absolutely succeed because, the one commonality between, I think, all successful people is their work ethic. That's the common thread. It's no different than the self-made billionaire to guys like us who were able to, kind of rise up and succeed in our military. We just didn't get paid like them.
Right.
Did you know with Black Rifle Coffee's Coffee Club subscription, you can get fresh coffee shipped to you every month? What? You don't even have to go to the store. Whoa. You don't even have to leave your bed. What? Wow. How did you get in here?
You might want to go ahead and join the Black Rifle Coffee Club subscription before one of these guys shows up at your place.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So what made you pivot from having Ranger posters on your wall to being like, this one's for Chesty, join the Marine Corps? Because, you spent a long time in the Marine Corps, and obviously there was motivation behind that decision and follow through.
Yeah. So I think my first realization was not when I went to boot camp at Sand Hill down at Benning. Because I went to boot camp after my junior year of high school because the National Guard at the time had this thing called the split option program.
Yeah.
Right. And I got a bunch of buddies who've done the same exact. There's a crazy amount of Marines that started out in the National Guard, and I can't tell you how many I've come across. And their stories are probably not that dissimilar to mine. But I think my first realization of knowing that I joined the wrong branch, right, was after my junior year in high school. I did boot camp down at Fort Benning, and I think that was like 8 weeks or something like that. And then I went back and I finished out my senior year of high school, right? And then when I graduated high school, I think a few days later, I was hightailing it back to Benning to go through AIT. So my boot camp and my AIT were split up by a year of high school. And my first iteration, that first 8 weeks was absolutely phenomenal. I totally lucked out. Like I was in a platoon with a bunch of backcountry kids from Oregon, right? Like mountain boys from Oregon, man. And our drill sergeants, right? That's always hard for me to say because right. Our drill sergeants at the time were absolutely motivated. Like there was one triple badger, and the heavy was he was a straight Ranger all the way. And that was back in the day where Rangers, all you had to do is like, yeah, that's a Ranger. You could tell, screaming high and stupid, and just fucking looking like absolute like perfection as far as everything about him, just immaculate everything. And this guy was borderline psychotic. I wish I could find that guy because incredible drill sergeant. All of them were, and it was extremely motivating. It was awesome, And then I went back to high school, which I then became, for lack of a better term, a dickhead in high school because I had just come out of this thing and I was like, yeah, man, I got to come back to this shit. Are you kidding me? I do not want to come back here.
Right.
And I was ready to move on. And so that probably made me a prick in a lot of ways. Maybe not mean, but just, I was over high school. I was ready to fucking move on. Anyways, when I came back to Benning, and went through AIT, that's when I realized like,
what was your MOS that you're going through AIT for?
11 Bravo.
Okay. Yeah. Infantry.
Yeah. And what I found was there was a complete shift in mentality with the drill sergeants. With it almost seemed as if they had taken all the drill sergeants that were there last time and replaced them with like the bottom of the barrel. Bottom of the barrel, like type drill sergeants that literally just seemed like they did not give a fuck. And that kind of was my first glimpse into like, something's wrong here. And I remember to this day, coming down the steps from our barracks there, I remember thinking to myself, I should have fucking joined the Corps. but no, I think those were kind of my first moments of realization, that, and I think, once I make my mind up about something, it's pretty hard to dissuade me after that. So, I got out, I ended up getting out of the National Guard in not such a good way, and in order for me to get into the Marine Corps, there was a lot of explaining to do, like it was like a lot of explaining to do. Like, okay, so you're telling us that you hightailed it out of the Guard before you were supposed to. You didn't show up for these drills. Like, you didn't do this stuff. Like, all right, so, but now you want to come over to our blessed Corps? Like, what makes you think we're going to take your dumb ass? And so it took me some years to kind of correct that problem. And, during those years, I tried a lot of different things, I ran heavy equipment. I trimmed trees. I did, I worked in swanky, like very swanky type joints. I'd like to keep it clean because I have children, but
yeah.
But I bounced around and tried my hat at just about everything that I could, and the whole while there was this feeling that like none of it is gonna scratch the itch. None of this shit that you are trying to do is going to feed this freaking this beast that is craving to do something else. And I knew what that something else was. I absolutely knew it. And so I think for those years there in between, I was absolutely not being true to myself. I was kind of lying to myself, like, yeah, I can try this, I can do this, I can try this, and I think the writing was on the wall the whole time. I just kind of chose not to read it for a while. And then I got to that point where, a very good friend of mine, absolute mentor to me, and he always has been. He was Vietnam, with my dad, they saw each other there anyways. And he kind of told me, he's like, hey, it's shit or get off the pot, one or the other. Like, you need to make a decision. You're almost 26 years old. Like, and so that absolutely resonated with me. And I think, there was some very difficult time. That was a difficult time prior to joining. But I kind of ultimately made that decision for a number of reasons. Primarily, because I wanted to give my daughter, Natalie, something to be proud of. And I think me looking back on my life at that point in time, I was struggling to come up with like, hey, this is why your own child would be proud of you, Right. And I knew how important that was to me growing up, because I was extremely proud of my father. Not everything he did, but like, the way he loved me and the way he gave me and showed me by example. I wanted to give that to my daughter. And also, I also didn't want to grow to become a a very old man and looking back and reflecting on my own life that, hey, you know, you had an opportunity, but you never went with it. You didn't do it. And then, you know, living with regret. If you believe in doing something and you want to do it, then, you know, do it. And that way you don't have to live with the, God, I wish I would have done that. God, I wish I would have lived my life like that, you know?
Right.
And so I think those primarily were the two driving factors. That and I absolutely had a lust for it, you know, for that kind of lifestyle.
Did you feel like after you made that decision to get into the Corps, like everything kind of lined up for you? Like it all kind of became easy?
Oh, yeah. I think I had never up into that point. And, you know, we all talk about boot camp. And I love talking about boot camp because it always, it never fails to make me laugh, because that is some of the silliest, funniest shit that you will ever see in your lifetime. Marine Corps boot camp. It is a straight mind fuck to the highest order. Maybe not to the highest order, but, you know, certainly for when you're at that age going through and you've never seen shit like that, you know, the things that recruits do, like, is some incredibly funny shit. But yeah, I found very early on that, like, this absolutely is it. This is it. I found it. My search for what the fuck I want to do in this lifetime is over. And at least that has carried me, you know, and it carried me through an entire career with the Marines.
So Clint, here's a little intro perspective question for you. We kind of know why you joined. Why did you keep going and have such a long, successful at the level you did? Because was it service to the country? Was it just you loved your job? Because I think for anybody, especially guys that have served over a decade in units that require such devotion, what kept you going? Like what kept you going and wanting to just get back in the fight year after year after year after year?
No, I think that's a great question, and I don't want to say that I spent a lot of my time in the Marines thinking about that. Not until after I gotten wounded and had a lot of time to kind of reflect on my life. Like, what in the hell was it that kept me engaged, so strongly engaged for all those years? And, you know, I'd gotten to a point where I was kind of forced to have those discussions just with myself. Like, what was it that kept me going? Why? You know, and this isn't off topic. And if I stray too far, just bring me back. But I had a good friend recently, which I'm sure just like all of you over the past couple of days, you have friends of yours, like good Americans that have probably been getting in touch because they know their friend went and did things that they didn't partake in, that they didn't do. It doesn't mean they didn't support it, but, you know.
Yeah.
So, which is very cool. You've got good Americans out there that are reaching out to people that they know did a lot of stuff in that effort. And I had one recently, a friend reach out and say, you know, hey, thinking about you, you know, I can't imagine how horrible you must be feeling at this point in time. And, you know,
considering the situation going on in Afghanistan, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And she, you know, said, hey, this country owes you a great, you know, debt or whatever. I can't remember how it was worded, but you know, almost immediately I kind of look at that and I'm like, yeah, it's not how I feel. I don't feel that way. I never have. I never have felt that way. I've always felt, if anything, the exact opposite. The opposite being like, no, my country doesn't owe me anything. I owe our country. I do. It's on me. I've always felt that because, I think that's one of the things that my father like stressed on when I was a kid. He stressed on the importance of and the value of individual liberties and freedoms, and why that makes our country so unique in the world, and that it cannot be just inherited. It has to be earned. You have to earn it. And, so having those feelings and thinking that way and having that mindset was, again, something that like I try to look back in my life and think, when did I start thinking that way? And I don't know that I can remember, because I think it was just part of how my father wove who I am. And again, that's one of the things I'm very grateful about how I was brought up and raised in certain ways. But bring me back on. Did that? No, I'm not sure if that answered the question.
Yeah,
bring me.
Did, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think there was something else I was going to say about it. Yeah, it's all right.
You've had such a long. Well, one, you had such a long career, and when you joined the Marine Corps, were you in 0311?
No. So when I joined, I went on a recon contract.
And, you did. Oh, okay.
And that was when they first opened it up. In fact, that's kind of how I got spurred back into like, okay, I'm going to do this, is because that the ability to do that came open, right?
Right.
Prior to that, like, there was no shortcut, so to speak, into the reconnaissance community.
Right.
Like you couldn't do that. The Marine Corps wouldn't allow for it. I was in a bar one day and I saw a young Marine. Yeah, I saw a young Marine come in, and he was in his blues. And first off, I'm like, okay, well, because I had known something a bit about the Corps, and what threw me off wasn't that he was in his blues. I mean, that attracts everybody. But what threw me off was he was wearing a pair of jump wings, and he was like a lance corporal,
right?
Or I think it was either lance corporal or corporal. He was a lance corporal, because it just did not make sense to me. I remember going over to him in the bar and, introduced myself, and I'm like, hey man, how's it going? Little pleasantries back and forth. And I'm like, so tell me about those jump wings. Like how, because I thought he was wearing some shit that he shouldn't have been wearing.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I went to jump school, Fort Benning. And I'm like, okay, but you're a lance corporal. Did you get busted down? Or I mean, and I think back on it, like the gall that I had to go over and start like asking this Marine, like, what the fuck are you wearing? And I hadn't even been in the Corps yet, right? But that's where he, the young Marine kind of explained like, yeah, I went in on a contract, and I basically, after recon course, the BRC or ARS, whichever he went through, he ended up going to jump school. And I was like, open, like recon contract. Whoa. And that's what set the gears in motion. And I think it was literally the next day that I was over off of, I think Ingram or wherever it's the Marine recruiters station. And I'm like, hey guys,
tell me more. Yeah. Tell me more.
Yeah. So that's kind of what what spurred it, or maybe not spurred it, but got things back on track. And it's kind of cool to say that an encounter in a bar is what kind of got my life back on track.
Marine Corps
fitting.
way.
Yeah.
It was
go ahead.
Did you participate in both Iraq and Afghanistan?
I did. I did. I will say, it's interesting. All you have to do is mention the two countries, and I think all of us feel like you could probably just talk forever. Heartaches in both places. Extreme heartache. The kind of heartache that I don't wish on other Americans, but I do wish that Americans would at least make an attempt to try and understand. Iraq in the earlier days of the wars, and then Afghanistan in the middle and towards the end. And honestly, if you ask me which place I'd prefer to fight, and this may sound like a very morbid thing, I don't know, but there was something about Afghanistan that was absolutely intoxicating, and for so many different reasons, but primarily because I think the Afghans have a lot more fight in them than in other places in the world, and that was I was fortunate enough to bear witness to a respectable enemy in some ways, right? And in those ways that I did not necessarily see that out of some of the folks that we fought in Iraq. And I don't mean to generalize it, but I kind of always felt in Iraq like this sleazy feeling, like this, where in Afghanistan, I don't know, this may not be the best thing to say, but I felt like I had more respect for our enemy in Afghanistan because of the things that I watched them do. Right. The images and kind of thoughts I think that I sometimes think about, is, and you guys have probably all witnessed something similar, but that lone last man, that was dug in like a tick into that compound and, slugged it out with us. And he's completely surrounded by the most incredible, force on the planet, and I had the fortune of being able to witness some of these enemies' actions, because regardless of whether or not they're a bad guy or they're a terrorist or whatever, when you watch people do things in their last acts of defiance, there's a respect in that I give, regardless of what kind of life they've lived, whether that be good or evil. It's hard not to respect the thing that makes that person, knowing that death is imminent, right? Charge out for a final time, alone, unafraid, with a broken fucking infield rifle, and say, "Hey, you'll have to fucking kill me." And being able to see things like that, it changes your scope about people. It gives you I think a deeper understanding of the full spectrum of how people are and how they can be, everything from good to bad to indifferent. Afghanistan and what has gone on there, as the whole world watches, in disgust, and rightfully so, because I know that I speak for a very, very large majority of veterans when I say that I'm absolutely appalled and disgusted with the leadership of our United States government. I'm absolutely disgusted, and I don't think there's ever been a point in my life where I have been so absolutely disgusted with anything, with anything. And I think now more than ever, there is this strengthened bond that is currently being created and that will continue to strengthen between Vietnam veterans and our generation of veterans, those of us that decided to, to go and put some skin in the game. And honestly, I do not look at this shit that's going on as a loss for us, for what we did, because we did the best that we could with what we had and what we were allowed to fucking do, right? Had we been allowed to do and wage war the way a war should be fucking waged, we would have been out of this goddamn mess years and years ago. It had been over, done with. But the United States has lost its fucking balls in a lot of ways, and it pains me and irks me, and it freaking kills me to watch that happening, and it's not in slow motion anymore. It's not in slow time anymore. It's happening rapidly. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I honestly, but these are things that kind of weigh heavily on me.
Well, Clint, I think it's great perspective. And I think if you want to open up about that, because I'm sure everybody at the table has been in that country here. And I've been getting a lot of feedback from people that kind of don't know how to internalize and think through the reality of the situation that's going on, that have lost countless numbers of friends, injuries, time away from their family, fighting a war. And then you're at this kind of precipice of, for what? So I think kind of working through that could be very helpful for some people, to be honest with you. And I don't necessarily have the answers myself. And I think that question's for everybody here, to include you.
Yeah. I think it's a hard one to vocalize and articulate in a way that would be all encompassing and deliver a message that a wide audience can easily digest. But when I look at it, like I was saying, I don't think this should ever be viewed as a loss on the side of those who chose to go and fight. I believe that to my core. I also believe to my core that if we choose to point our fingers, at someone to blame, then this Marine blames it straight on the shoulders of politicians and the millions and millions and millions of Americans who sat idly by on the sidelines, right? Pretending for the past 20 years like we weren't fighting wars on multiple fronts throughout the globe, right? Sat idly by watching reality TV, the Kardashians. And, it's something that I felt like I had come to grips with, right, at a certain point, because, around 2014, 2015, my circle had become so narrow in scope as far as who I even would allow myself to talk to or to talk to me. I kept everything at bay except for the people that I knew were doing what I was doing. And as you guys know, it's a small circle. It's a very small circle. But I think that blame, that's where I would point my finger. And it's not me wanting to blame somebody, you know. It's just, hey, it's a shit sandwich. It's an absolute shit sandwich. And I think those people who either made horrible decisions along the way in the political arena, or those people that decided they were going to pretend like we weren't out fighting wars on multiple fronts, like they can fucking choke on it. All of them, every fucking one of them, they can fucking choke on it. They can eat the shit sandwich. And you know what? They're going to eat. They're finding out right now, like, holy shit, this is it's a total shit sandwich. You know what? But they won't choke on it. They won't swallow it. They'll fucking spit it out. And you know what will happen? In another 2 years, they're going to come by another shit sandwich. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to fucking pick it up. They're going to be like, ooh, wow, this could be really yummy. Hey, let's take a bite of this shit. Right? And to me, that's kind of how I see what American policy and politicians have been doing with our country, you know, my whole adult life. And you know, it's one of those things that would segue me into a different conversation. But I hope that our nation pulls their fucking head out of their ass and finally starts to at least pay attention to history. Because from the get-go, history freaking told us, like, hey, this isn't gonna work. Not if you do it this way. But we failed. Our political leaders failed to learn or to educate themselves on the history of that part of the world. And, you know, and anyways, I mean to get dark on you guys. But
no, I think that's exactly what a lot of people are thinking, because, you know, I've received probably 100 messages in the last couple of days just watching this. I was on Fox this morning talking about this. I've been thinking about it pretty much nonstop since the withdrawal basically was, you know, announced. And so, you know, I'll echo a lot of the same things that you're saying, which is, I think the veterans out there that have served in Afghanistan and Iraq, you've got to be proud of your service. This is not on you. Like, it is not on you. It is something that you have to be proud of. You have to carry yourself with dignity. You have to lead in a way that's maintaining positive psychology, because it's not on you. It's, you know, it is the, you know, it's my opinion, right? So this is just my stupid fucking opinion from one guy, is that Clint's right. The failure of, I think, our political and elected officials, and then I would say a lot of the Pentagon, to understand history in Afghanistan. This is not a new thing. Like, Genghis Khan, this goes back to fucking Genghis Khan, for Christ's sake. This is the British, this is the Soviets, this is hundreds, if not thousands of years of warfare that we could have opened up a book and looked at it. But what you had is you had a group of people that were full of, I would say, self-righteous hubris that continued to fail the American warfighter year after year after year. And we saw it. We saw it overseas on a constant basis, which was attorneys were involved in our ROE. Mm-hmm. Oh, who the fuck is an attorney to tell me who the fuck I should be able to shoot or blow up? It's like the American warfighter understands exactly who they need to pursue and how they need to pursue it. The Pentagon has just as much to blame with this. So if I will point fingers, I don't give a fuck. I'll point fingers all day long, which was, I called it in 2012 when I was over there, sitting at with a group of people in a conference room, and they were all sucking each other's dicks about how fucking great they were and how competent all of our Afghani counterparts were and how much of a success it was going to be if we withdrew or downsized the American military presence. And I was like, you guys are fucking crazy. This thing is going to collapse like a dying star. We could see the conventional Afghan military and how capable they were. And I could also see the special operations component of our counterparts and how much fucking work they had on a regular basis, how active we were on the advisor front, and how blatantly incompetent the political elite, how they actually understood what was happening. So what was happening across the border in Pakistan, who was holding Pakistan accountable for their bullshit for 20 years, their complacency and their lack of ability to hold people accountable, administration after administration, asking for honest answers from the military. They were getting it, by the way. You know it and I know it. You know, and I was talking about this with a mutual friend of ours yesterday about how many guys were turning in reports from, the lower level, expecting people or inflating the effectiveness of what they were doing because they wanted to get on the executive, the executive read, the brief, right? They were inflating reports. They were talking about how great their assets were. They were talking about how great their counterparts were conducting warfare. There was zero doubt in my mind. Without air support and military special operations advisors in that thing, it would fold like a house of cards.
Yeah, and inflating body count wasn't something that was just specific to Vietnam.
Right.
That shit absolutely did happen. And, it's unfortunate that we don't own the responsibility of a lot of those shortcomings. I'm not saying we don't, but that we haven't learned from that. So
we haven't learned from it. And I think when we look at the totality of this and we look at how much effort, energy, sacrifice has gone into the last 20 years, we went in with the best of intention. Where we went astray is when we allowed, and we didn't have anything to do with it, when the political correct portions of our government decided they could manage a politically correct war in Afghanistan, we lost. As soon as they put Islamic Republic of Afghanistan into the Constitution, we lost. Like that when I say we lost, it's not we didn't lose shit. Like the American service member, the guy that went out there and fought his ass off every day, they won, and they should fucking hold their head up with a lot of pride. Where we were failed is within the State Department, the Pentagon, and administration after administration that continued to do the same shit over and over again. When we started reoccupying Soviet fucking fire bases, that, to me, early on, it's like, well, the Soviets fucking lost. So why are we continuing to do the same thing that they were doing? And even as we start to look at the entirety of the history, I guess we'd have to unpack that for a few hours. But you're right. The problem is that the American citizens are not expecting more from their political elite, and they're not being held accountable. The thing that I would love to be able to see is people being fired and people resigning over this complete shit sandwich. The big things that I'm looking at from my perspective is you have the special immigrant visas, the SIVs for interpreters, for our counterparts that have continued to apply. They're 18 to 20,000 back, in applications. They've been able to process 1,000 of those in 6 months. They have 18,000 to get through. So we've known about this for months. We've known that this could be a possibility. There's just no possible way this wasn't briefed by sections of the intelligence community that this was a possible outcome. And they decided to drag their feet And so now you have a bunch of people that are going to be targeted specifically by the Taliban because of their help to the American service member for 2 decades.
Yep.
Not only them, they're going to be targeted. Their families are going to be targeted. These people are going to be pursued. They're going to be executed. They're going to be put in fucking prison and re-education camps. You name it. The reality of that is that every one of these idiots that has had a decision in this over the last 20 years has blood on their hands. Every one of them. The other piece to this was a fucking possibility from the beginning. And you can't tell me that we didn't have time to prepare the VA and the psychological service support mechanism in the United States, knowing that this could be a possible outcome. And we have to make sure that the guys that have served this know that they served with dignity, that they served with fucking pride and the utmost respect. And then if they see this happening, that we have to go to work making sure that those guys are protected as well, physically and psychologically protected. So when we look at the 2 big failures here, it's like the failure to protect the people that have protected us downrange.
Yep.
And the failure to prepare for the psychological effects of what could look like failure to some. And they didn't do that. And those motherfuckers need to own it. That's the thing that they need to own. And the only way we're going to do that is by, one, telling them that they fucking own it and bouncing their ass out of office. Like, get them the fuck out. Like, these woke fucking generals and their bullshit about all this garbage they've been talking about fucking at the Hill. Like, oh, we need, more socialist beliefs or whatever the fuck. And this is where I'm going to go down the rabbit hole.
Send it.
Who's going to fire him, Evan?
Yeah, nobody. Nobody, Clint. So, nobody's going to fire him. These guys are talking about, critical race theory and, trying to recruit more people that have, mixed emotions about their sexual identity. You know what these motherfuckers should have been doing? Maybe trying to prepare an exit strategy, because piss poor performance, what is it? Prior planning prevents piss poor performance, right? Maybe you should have been more busy fucking preparing an exit strategy and making sure that our counterparts were protected and weren't going to get their fucking heads lopped off in the streets of Kabul and Mazar and fucking Herat and everywhere else. Maybe you should have been more concerned with that than trying to fucking put lipstick on and placate a fucking administration that doesn't know whether or not they should be male or female based on the fucking day of the week.
And then trying to figure out which shitter to use. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and not only that, but accepting the fact that we're turning over billions of dollars worth of fucking arms to the Taliban, and then we can't even invest in a fucking domestic system built to support veterans and run it properly. Like, the ineptitude across the board in this shit is fucking terrible. And what I hope, the silver lining in this, is that the GWAT veteran and this community comes together and makes their fucking voice heard. And we can do everything in our power so this shit doesn't fucking happen again, because we have people that can't get fucking prosthetics, but then we're turning billions of dollars over to the fucking Taliban with no recourse, no exit strategy, and then leaving our fucking interpreters, commandos that have active visas. I know 2 people, we just got one out today, my buddy did, but like an active visa sitting at the airport is like, I'm going to get executed. If I can't get out in the next couple of days, I'm getting tied up and shot in the fucking head. Like, and you're just sitting there like, this is the fucking dude that dedicated and fought wars side by side by American unconventional forces for like fucking 15 years. And we're just going to be like, later, bro, fuck out of here, dude. Like, fuck out of here. But it's like, we have to be heard. Like, because this is just going to brush over and the same shit's going to happen to future generations. It's unacceptable.
The scary thing, I think, is we have the ability to do that. We absolutely do have the ability to do that. Hardcore lessons learned and execute that shit. What scares me more than anything isn't what has already happened. It's what is going to fucking happen if we don't pull our heads out of our asses. And I say we, I'm primarily talking about fucking bozos up on DC's Capitol Hill. That whole place, it's not a swamp. It's a fucking sewer. It's a sewer.
Yeah.
And what my concern, those things that are about to happen, well, what happens in the void? What happens? Yeah,
right.
Taliban are going to take over and they're going to run the country. Yeah, yeah. What about China now?
Yeah.
Right? What is China doing when they look at the situation that we allowed to unfold? And I say we, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? How are they looking at it? And I guarantee you,
as an opportunity,
it doesn't align with doesn't align with American interest.
No,
I
it's an
guarantee
opportunity
you
zone.
that
100%.
Well, their embassies are open, guys, just so you know.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Russian and the Chinese embassy both in Kabul are still open. Just for context. They're still fucking open. So if we think that this is like just the Taliban, if we think, yes, the withdrawal from Afghanistan only affects the Afghanis and it's only about them. No, it's not. And if we think for 1 second, to Clint's point, if these people don't start turning the fucking Kardashians off in this country and start paying attention to what's happening overseas, one of these assholes overseas that, like the Chinese or the Russians, like take your fucking pick. They're going to stuff us like a fucking turkey on the international stage. And if we don't fucking vote these dumb motherfuckers out, they're elderly, incompetent, greedy, and they're the ones that are continuing to fuck this entire thing up. And if we don't focus as a nation and start electing, guys like, this is a stump for Joe, Joe Kent. If we don't start electing guys like Joe, electing guys like Crenshaw, electing people like Tulsi that have actually understood the consequences of war and what's happening on the veteran fucking community, that they have a representative voice that is representing all of us as the entirety of the veteran community, we are going to find ourselves in a situation where the Chinese and the Russians are going to hand us our ass. And like, all of us can say it. We can all kind of raise the flags, and we have been for fucking, by the way, Clint, you know this. We've been saying this for fucking 20 years, which is, if we do not keep our eye on the real strategic threat, if we don't wake the fuck up and stop like pretending that, whether you identify as a fucking dolphin or a gator or all this other culture war horse shit that people are talking about, and whether or not it's an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old that should be able to identify as whatever. Dude, if these people do not fucking wake up, there will be no democracy or democratic republic of the United States. Like, they need to wake up, because China has a 50-year plan. And it doesn't have anything to do with, the type of flag that you put in your front yard that is not the American flag. It has everything to do with the Chinese Communist Party. It has everything to do with socialism. It has everything to do with communism.
I hear all of that, and I 100% agree. And these are things that most of us are very passionate about in our lives, because we do have a love for our country. We absolutely do, and the idea is that it was founded upon. And while that may be a bit different for everyone, they may see the beauty in our founding in different ways. For me, the beauty is that it was based on individual. The cornerstone is individual liberty, right? Individual liberty. And to your point, Evan, if we do not take drastic action to rectify, to course correct the path that we are on, like, I've got news for all of you Americans that chose to sit out these past 20 years. You will not have the fucking freedom that you have right now to do anything. And you can already see it. You can already fucking see it. If you don't see it, then you're probably the fucking sheep that I'm talking about. You pay no attention to anything that's going on around you. All you do is fucking follow the goddamn sheep around. and you fucking pick up little 15-second blurbs that other people type about. And you say, oh, yep, that's gospel. That's truth. I guess I'll have to wear fucking 5 goddamn masks in front of my face. Yeah, you're the problem. And if you people, the people I'm talking about, you guys know who I'm talking about, those that are disengaged from everything and believe that they are entitled to all of it and that they don't believe they have to give anything back. They're the problem. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying it's like you don't have the right to do exactly that. You do. You have the right to be a fucking shitbag here in America. And while I don't agree with living my life like a shitbag, and I certainly don't want to fucking hang around other shitbags, that is your right. That is. And it is one of the things about America that I think makes it such a special place. If you choose to live your life in a certain way that does not align with mine, I don't care. I don't care. You have the liberty and freedom to live your life however you want, so long as you don't tread here. As long as you do not infringe upon my rights and my individual liberties and freedoms to be able to not only carry myself around day to day, but how I raise my children, how I run my family. Those belong to me. Those decisions belong to me, not to some government bureaucrat. Those people work for us. They work for us. We don't work for them, and we're goddamn sure not their fucking subjects. And I don't know. I think my hope is that here in the near future, some of those people start waking up. And I hope to God some of them are a little afraid. I do, because that'll mean that they're starting to realize, like, you're starting to go down a route where if you keep going, and we talked about this, right? You keep going down that route, that pendulum, it's not going to swing back. Right. It's not going to bounce back the other way because it has gained enough momentum to keep going. And what happens when you get into a flat spin, on a free fall? You start turning and you don't correct it. Like, you don't correct it, what happens? You just keep going faster and faster. And the next thing you know, you are down the road on a level of extremism that history has shown over time and over history has shown us, if you don't course correct that shit, we are going towards a place where we're going to have a fucking genocide amongst each other. Mm-hmm. And anyways,
I think you're spot on. I think that people, if they cherish individual liberty and freedom, it's impossible for them to forfeit those things. And when they forfeit them to incompetent bureaucrats, if the last 2 years has not shown us so many examples, the political elites do not have our best interest in mind. They have their best interest in mind. They make horrible policy decisions that affect our individual lives on a regular basis, and they continue to do that. We can't continue to forfeit our liberty to idiots. Like, that's just the bottom line. For me, I look at it, I'm like, gosh, guys, this is so easy. You can look at the template over there in Afghanistan and say, okay, Taliban is what? It's Islamic education, it's Sharia law, it's a very tightly controlled fascist or ideological dictatorship. We don't want that here. That's directly contradictory to anything that we believe in. This is not the path to freedom, and the path to success is not through more government controls, forfeiture of individual liberty. The forfeiture of individual liberty and then allowing bureaucrats, to your point, to control our destiny.
Yeah, but all they do is they project that under a narrative of safety, right? That's what the government does. I'm here to keep you safe, right? And that's the antithesis of what individual liberty looks like. It's we the people, and we the people keep each other safe, right? So, but that's what happens is, like to Clint's point, what's going on with mask mandates, making, 4-year-old kids who essentially their death rate from flu is way higher than COVID. And we're not basing any of this in science, but it's just saying like, we'll keep you safe. Just give us a little more. Let's start getting mandatory vaccines. And it's fucking insane. And people, to your point, Clint, are just acting like sheep and like, well, I don't really want to do the hard work or complain, so I guess I'll just go do it. And where does that go? It's fucking terrifying. Everything we know as a country, like, could go away. That's real. I sound like a tin hat wearer, but that's real. That's fucking real. You think the government gives a fuck about any of us that care about our liberties? Look at we're just talking about Afghanistan. Look how that was handled. Are you fucking kidding me?
Not tinfoil hat wearing at all, Matt. It's fucking reality. That's called being a realist. That's called somebody that understands how the fucking world works. And everyone here, I'm gonna say everyone, right? So many Americans take it for granted.
Yes.
So many Americans never pause for a moment out of their whole life to recognize just how incredibly awesome our country is.
That's how you can thank a veteran for their service, is maintaining the sanctuary of freedom in America. Because it's not about the GWAT generation. It's not about the Vietnam generation. It's about every fucking generation since the inception of this country that fought, bled, and fucking died for the very individual freedoms that we have today. And if we let people chip away the stone of freedom, it's going to look real fucking flat very soon.
Hey, and the torch gets passed, right? It gets passed, and it'll come to us, right? It'll come that torch. We've been carrying that torch, and we're already there. Like, and I feel like all the time I'm holding the torch out to the younger guys, and it's awesome when you see the younger generation, because we talk in generalities. Yeah, younger generation this, the younger generation that, but like there's still that hardcore inner wire, that hot wire that keeps it burning, that keeps it driving. They are the ones, those youngsters right now, right? And I hope some of them are listening. Like I hope they're listening. And I hope they receive this message that take the torch and drive on. And then when it comes your time, you pass it on. Keep the fire burning. Because when it goes out, like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in darkness. I don't like the idea of living in darkness. And so I have an immense amount of pride for the younger generations that have already made the choice to go that direction. And for those who haven't yet and are thinking about it, I would say that there is very few things in life that could reach the amount of or the level of pride in your country than serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. It's something that you whether you do for 4 years or an entire 20+ career, 30-year career, like that's something that will stay with you forever. Mm-hmm. I would argue and say it's best to not let that define you and define your life, right? But it is a powerful thing. Taking the initiative to go and put your skin in the game, to earn your freedom. And that's how I've always looked at it. It is like, how am I going to feel with myself enjoying all these liberties and freedoms that generations, for hundreds of years since we have been our country, how am I going to feel if I never pay it forward? If I never pay it forward, what kind of person does that make me feel? I mean, what kind of person do I see myself as? And I could never just quite allow myself to do otherwise. And, this isn't me saying, hey, get out there and you have to join the military in order to feel that sense of pride and love for your country. And we were talking about this yesterday. There's thousands of different ways to serve your country. And I just wish
Step one, don't vote for people who have socialistic viewpoints. Maybe that's a way you can serve your country.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a dark road and it goes nowhere.
Nowhere. Well, Clint.
Yeah. Sorry,
dude, thank you.
Ramble.
Now, this has been a really good episode. I think that a lot of people will take a lot out of that. I think the amount of time that we've spent talking just offline. I've been trying to get Clint on the show for over a year. He always has way fucking cooler stuff to do. But
yeah, I know.
No, I thank you, man, for everything you've done, for what you continue to do. And know that the guys here at the company, like company-wide, man, we have a ton of respect for you and all the people that you've served with, like across the board. You've given an incredible amount.
Likewise, brother. It's both ways. Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't be happier to associate myself with I couldn't be happier to associate myself with a company like this. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe in the company itself, Black Rifle, and what you guys have built and the culture that has come with it. And I look forward to seeing all of his successes in the future.
Thanks, Clint. It's an honor, man.
Thanks, buddy.